This podcast was proudly brought to you by Blue Skies Debt Consulting, effective solutions to lighten your financial burden. Please contact us on our Facebook page, Blue Skies Debt Solutions. We'll turn your cloudy skies blue again. Delpod Original Podcasts is proud to present Month of Entertainment. Sit back and enjoy the show. As always, we urge viewers to consider donating via Zapper to show support. All donations will be greatly appreciated. So without further ado, let's get started.
There was once a doorway, which in later years was bricked up.
But sometimes we'll still see her in her hospital gown, wandering along the corridors, and it would make this horrible creaking sound.
Paint a cross on the front door.
Some of them are supernatural.
And so, it was actually Katie that rung that bell at the dead of midnight. And to us, it looks like the ghost walked through a wall.
That's not normal.
Something bumped me over.
I had a very depressed feeling, this warmth that came over me.
As if somebody pushed me. Yeah.
But there's something a lot more scary than this open mausoleum.
And to this day, the ghost of this poor wretch still haunts the spot at a certain angle in the road at the proper time, midnight.
Until it was completely dark.
Mr. Mark Rose-Christie, also known as South Africa's celebrity paranormalist. Welcome on my podcast, sir.
Nice to be there. Thank you, Delano.
Pleasure's all mine. It's an honor to have you on. Right, so let's kick it off. I think it's going to be interesting. Why did you get into, or what caused you to start the ghost productions, if I can call it that?
I had been on the London Ghost bus in 1988 with some friends and my cousin, and I decided that South Africa needed something very similar. But because I'm an entertainer and an ex-magician and illusionist, I also put a lot of that into it. So people get the science of the paranormal, the history of the paranormal, the types of ghosts, some demonstrations as well. We use dowsing rods, all sorts of things. And I thought that South Africa could do with such a thing, but a lot more. I'm a very multi-dimensional person. Even in my illusion shows, I was like that. I like to have something that appeals to different tastes, put it this way. So that's why I did it. I was going to start it a little later, but I had a road traffic accident, which doesn't affect my tours. So I started it prematurely, basically.
Okay, well, it turned out to be a huge success nonetheless. So,
well, I mean, you said celebrity earlier on. I think that's because we've been on television so many times all over the world, on radio and newspaper, and so forth. But the paranormalist side Certainly, yeah. Well, I am a parapsychologist. I studied psychology, and a sub-branch is parapsychology.
Awesome.
And if you're going to study the paranormal seriously, you've got to be a detective of sorts and know something about science, particularly quantum physics. And you also have to be a magician to catch people out if they're playing tricks, and it's not real, it's a hoax. And and you want to be a psychologist to make sure they're not suffering illusion or some mental sort of phenomena.
Yeah. Do you find that quite often?
Yes, it happens all over the world. There's a lot of hoaxes. I mean, I do agree there with Joe Nichols, who's probably the most famous debunker out there. He doesn't believe in any hauntings and so forth at all, although science is changing a lot because of the different types of ghosts that there are.
Yeah. But with regards to the mental aspect, do you think it happens more often than not, or?
Well, let me put it this way. If I can break down the types of ghosts, then it might be easier to understand for your viewers. First of all, you get a thing called a residual apparition, or a replay ghost, which was discovered by Dr. R.C.C. Clay the last half of the last century. He saw a horse and a rider with a Bronze Age weapon, and the whole apparition vanished before him. And there was a mound in the ground. This was in Dorset in Old England. And upon inspection, the bones of the horse and rider and the Bronze Age horseman are all there. So,
wow.
People can go and have a look at the mound themselves now. And so we understand that that at least replay or residual apparitions do occur because they are imprints on the environment. They're not ghosts, they're just images. So if one had to walk through a doorway and you bricked up the doorway, it would walk through a wall because the surrounding structure upon which it is recorded or imprinted is still there. I mean, people don't walk through a wall, so why would ghosts? So it's because somebody bricked or changed the environment.
I thought they were lazy.
Okay. Probably. Then with poltergeist phenomena, there's been a lot of hoaxes. Poltergeists are not, there's no such thing as poltergeists. Polter is a German word for noisy. Geist is ghost. In medieval times, they thought they were evil spirits. There's no such thing as evil spirits. If humans are good in life and they pass on, they might not be good in the afterlife. Then they're still just bad people. They're not evil spirits as such. There's never been a documented case ever that's been verified of a ghost of any type hurting or anybody. So, that's a lot of nonsense. Jumbo, and we have enough trouble trying to convince the scientists and the atheists that there's a world of the paranormal. And with poltergeist phenomena, it's somebody who's distressed, usually adolescents. If they're not coping well with puberty, their mental energies spill off onto the environment via a process called recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. Psycho, the mind, kinesis, energy. So the proper term for that is RSPK. And so at least those two, it seems that even the greatest atheists, I don't know if you've ever heard of Sean Carroll.
Yes, very much.
Even he is starting, I saw something about him drifting towards the paranormal side. I mean, there's a lot of atheists who don't believe that there's a deity up there, but that doesn't mean to say they don't believe in souls or spirits of some sort or energies.
Exactly.
And
No, I said exactly.
Yeah. So there's a particle accelerator, I forget which one, about 3 months ago, which smashed 2 photons of light together, which are massless, and it produced matter. So, and at the Large Hadron Collider, if I'm not mistaken, in CERN, they've now discovered what they think is a 5th dimension. So there's a lot of work going on, and scientists are starting to more or less bend a little bit more towards, if not God, then a supreme consciousness. And especially ever since James Chalmers went onto the stage worldwide, to an audience worldwide, with the hard problem of consciousness. Because how do you explain that? How do you explain consciousness? I mean, people have out-of-body experiences, they have near-death experiences and all sorts of things. And people who are born blind can see during these experiences. Now, that doesn't happen when they dream. So we are now starting to find out that these experiences are pretty, for the most part, pretty real, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's actually my raise of just the hair is just raised. So you're blind, but you're not blind. So
no,
would you mind?
Not at all.
Would you mind abbreviating a bit on that? Because I'm not too sure I understand that. Do they have a different talent or a different way of coping with things? How come they dream?
Well, at the end of the day, I mean, your eyes are just optical mechanisms. It's your brain that does the imaging. So you don't need eyes.
Okay, so basically they won't be dreaming seeing a person. They will be dreaming.
No.
They'll be dreaming blank, but they'll be hearing the people.
Yeah, they surely will hear people and so forth and all that, yes, but they won't be able to see anything.
That's interesting.
But with out-of-body experiences and NDEs, they can actually see. I mean, it's quite amazing, really. So, there are certain turning points that are coming along in science as it grows. We're progressing to a new physics now beyond our quantum physics. And as we do so, we're finding out more and more about the paranormal. I mean, the fact that there is something rather than nothing. The atheists will say, like Peter Atkins at Oxford in a meeting or a debate might say, well, he did say with the Big Bang that nothing rolled over to become something. And well, I mean, how could there have ever been nothing? Or how could there ever have been something? Maybe something and nothing is the same thing, just variants of the same energy. Where did the energy come from? Well, I don't know. Nobody knows. So these are answers that we still have to try and answer, but that does not mean that there's no such thing as the supernatural. I mean, there's some religions that don't believe in a God, like, for instance, Jainism, but they believe in souls and spirits. So, they might believe there's a consciousness type God type thing, you know.
Just to touch on the consciousness.
Yes.
So what is it exactly that you do on the tours?
I've heard you talk about this before, but I try to make it more multi-dimensional.
You are, and I'm asking a question though. You believe that consciousness can't die; it carries on. So, what is it exactly that you do on the tours?
Well, we do a lot of things. As I said, I try to make it more multi-dimensional than the ones overseas. So we start off with a history of the paranormal, dating back to a very well-known story in Egypt. We then go to various different types of buildings, hospitals, schools, castles, haunted houses, if you can use the word haunted, houses, that sort of thing. We also do the science of the paranormal, where we do some demonstrations. We even do some water dowsing, or sometimes we use the same divining rods to find an electric junction box or something else.
Yes.
So these are what you call divining rods, which are much easier to use than the normal forked branch. And then we do, South Africans like a scare or two. So we've got one or two clever scares on the tours. We don't run around in sheets or something like that. We approach it very seriously. And we also have ghost hunting apps, which you can use on your cell phone. Which, it's quite interesting. You can have an EMF meter for detecting electromagnetic fields, as well as an EVP recorder, which is electronic voice phenomena. And it listens for you and prints the word on the screen. So this one app does both of those. So if you get a spike on your EMF meter and you get a word at the same time, then it's likely to be an entity. But if you don't, then it's probably not. It also will pick up imprints on the environment of somebody who might have visited the site yesterday and their name comes up. That doesn't mean it's an entity. And we don't call them up. I tell people, don't call any entities up. If they say something, that's fine. Just listen. But we don't go out there calling them up.
Don't fiddle around.
Yes, well, I mean, once you open that door, you don't know that you can close it. As my son Carl always says, and he's quite right.
Yeah. Bit off topic, but still on the same topic. Do you mind sharing the app's name, or would you prefer to keep it quiet?
No, it's fine. Just type in Google Ghost Hunting Tools with an S, and some icons will come up, and the one you choose is the turquoise one, sort of a bluey turquoise with a black handprint. Yeah, that's
awesome.
To you.
I will definitely be downloading. I will definitely be downloading that.
And right on to studio.
Right, yeah, of course. Why not?
Well, talking of studios, this is the one we broadcast from when we do our videos. We also do videos. I don't put too much of our ghost tours onto it. Some of the ghost tour stories are on it, but there's lots of other stories right around South Africa. So this is the studio that we actually broadcast from, and I use an electric candle so that the wind can't blow us away outside.
That looks awesome, really, it does. Especially the moon, it creates that freaky feeling. So 10 out of 10 for that. So one thing I want to try and let it follow now. Can you share any or some of your stories or experiences that
let's start at the bottom of the continent. I mean, well, if we started at the top, we'd have to go to the oldest city, which is Mapungubwe. That is the oldest city in South Africa, and it's got quite a few ancestral spirits that are seen there. So that's quite interesting to black folk who come on the tour, and get quite a few from all over Africa. We will get tourists from all over the world. So that part is interesting. And for the San and the Khoi, their paintings, their rock art is quite interesting, because often the shaman will be drawn on the cave wall. That's their spirituality. Think of it as their Bible.
Yes.
So in paintings, sometimes you'll see energy lines drawn around the shaman. And we know we've got energy fields around us. And scientists now have to admit that, because, I mean, you touch a doorknob, you get a shock. That's because we have an electrostatic force field around ourselves. And so does the doorknob. And when the two overlap, that's when you get that little spark. It's a darkish day, spark, we've got an electrochemical force field. I mean, that when they do an EEG, they don't stick a needle into your brain. They just put pads on the outside of your brain, because it can measure the force field. We've got 5 force fields we know about. Collectively, they call, in parapsychology, which is the study of the paranormal, is collectively called the bioplasmic or the bioetheric force field. Some people will call it an astral body, a soul, a spirit, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really matter. It all blends together at the end of the day.
Yeah, it might be some useful or useless information, but when I studied electricity, or as an electrician, which I decided not to go that route, I actually learned that your heart beats at a 0.004 or 0.002 amps per second, or per minute rather. So there are like literally electricity in you. That's why often you have a tendency, you'll pick up a drill bit and you get shocked, and or electrocuted, and you can't leave it, or it's just a quick zap and the guy drops dead. And it was in between those heartbeats.
Just the waves.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that brings us to the poltergeists. Poltergeist houses ever is in my hometown, Port Elizabeth, that had 70 fires, and on the 71st fire it burnt down, and they discovered it was one of the teenagers that was still having emotional conflict with her mother, and that mental energy then spills off onto the environment via the process I spoke of earlier on. So that is an energy that is doing that. So so Superintendent Marcus Kelly was brought in for that. not Cobus Jonker, because Cobus Jonker investigated other stuff, religious crimes, Satanism, and all that stuff. That I don't go into. I don't go into witches and Satanism and all that sort of stuff. I mean, the devil only ever arrived in the Bible in the New Testament. It's not even in the Old Testament. And it's all arrived from Zoroastrianism and religions like that, where there was a conflict. So we don't get into the mythological part of it. We have a tough enough time convincing the scientists and the atheists about spirits and consciousness. I stick to the science. Yes. I am a scientist, as I said earlier on. So Port Elizabeth, the Poltergeist House is probably one of the most famous. Johannesburg, Daisy de Melka is all over the place. How can a ghost be all over the place, people ask? Well, because she's a residual apparition. So she appears in the Supreme Court, in courtroom number 3, I think it's now called E, in Johannesburg. She appears at the women's prison, where there's an emotional imprint on the environment because she knew she was going to be hanged. And she appears at the Old Children's Memorial Hospital because she got a job there as a night porteress and not as a nurse, which she studied in Durban at the Berea Nursing Home, and we go past that on our Durban tour. So she was quite an upset lady all round. So her imprints are left in various places. So you find it in different cities, you know. But Joburg, I would say the most. And another good example of a replay ghost is at the cemetery we go to. I won't mention which one. People can see when they arrive, of a British soldier. Which leads me to a story about, I once went on a walk in Kimberley, and we heard about a British soldier who had no feet. And some architectural plans were discovered, and it shows a floor that is warped, maybe due to subsidence or a flood or something. Yes. And a new floor was built, about 20 centimeters higher. So he's recorded or imprinted on the lower environment, the floor, the warped floor. So yes. Obviously you wouldn't see the feet, So it's things like that that really start getting the scientists going, because they say, well, how is this possible? There must be an element of truth in this. And then, of course, in Cullinan, which is a quaint little town, we have the lantern lady who comes along looking for her husband. She's got a paraffin lantern. She walks the platform at the railway station, waiting for her husband to come back from the the Second World War, and he never arrived. And she's still seen to these days. That is what we call a crisis apparition.
For sure.
So it's a type of interactiveness. They will interact with you, whereas a replay or residual will not, because they are just a recording. They're just a video. They're just an image. That's all they are. They're not a ghost. They're not an entity. Okay. So she's a crisis-type ghost, much like the Uniondale hitchhiker, which is a fascinating story, although nobody knew why she used to thumb a ride until I got hold of Patrick MacDonald, who was the first policeman on the scene. And he told me the story 21 years ago. Now we can tell people the accurate story. When that VW Beetle rolled into the veld, they only picked him up. The two of them were on the way to the Cape to announce their engagement. And when he came around in hospital, he said, "Waar is my Macy? Where's my girlfriend?" And then they realized there's somebody else. She had been jettisoned out of the car before, during the roll, and she hit her head on a rock. Now, a lot of interactive apparitions don't know that they are dead. But they do eventually pass on, but they can linger for quite a while. So her astral body, her soul, her spirit, whatever you want to call it, all the energy fields, arose from the physical body. She saw, okay, my boyfriend's not here. I'm full of blood. I better get a ride. Now we know why she sticks her thumb out. Nobody had ever come to that. They just thought, oh, she was lost or something like that. So Patrick MacDonald helped me with that one. And so we are going to, during our videos that we make, that's going to be one of the stories where we really flesh it out, so that people can understand it. Yeah. And then we have another town called Parys, a quaint little artsy town. I mean, well, Cullinan and Parys they've got their own attractions. There's so many different things you can do in both. It's a very pretty town. And then we have the magistrate at the old courthouse. amazing. I think on just about every tour, when people use the ghost hunting apps, they do detect this lady who has a baby. Now, my son, Kyle Basson, when we arrived there, detected this, and the curator of the museum were quite amazed because he didn't know, nor did I, that the courtroom had changed to a maternity home. And he had seen this. He's a sensitive. He's not really a psychic as such. And then we learned about the magistrate who was struck by lightning. And people get photographs of either the magistrate or the lady carrying the dead baby just about every time we go to parades. I don't think there's been an instance when we haven't.
Jeepers.
So yeah, Cape Town is interesting. Torquay Manor has the most famous replay ghost in our country. Which is a little bit out of town in a lovely forest there. And a horse and a rider come down the stairs. Extian was his name. He had boasted about his new champion horse. And he took the horse inside and went around the dining room table, and they had a tipple, and he gave the horse a tipple, and somebody rang the slave bell. The horse got a fright, jolted, went outside with the rider, Extian, on top, and jumped into the air and went down the stairs, and they both broke their necks. Yes. And that is an anniversary replay. It only happens once a year.
Once a year,
on New Year's Eve. So that's an anniversary replay. A grand replay is where you see a whole battlefield, a whole battle taking place on a whole battlefield. One of the most famous examples, people know about Gettysburg, but David Bowie was leaving London, the singer, and he looked out his train window and he saw this entire battle scene, and he turned to his friend to say, have a look, and as he did, it had vanished. So that's a grand replay, also known as a time slip. But getting back to South Africa, we have fascinating ghost stories all over the place. I mean, in every town, we're running in Cape Town, Port Elizabeth, my hometown, Durban, Parys, Johannesburg, and then Cullinan. We're not running in Pretoria at the moment because there's certain issues there which I won't go into here, which will be going to the press, and we can sort that out at another time. But we hope to reestablish that one. Awesome. But as I say, the stories they're very varied. There's sad ones, there's happy. Just like humans are in life, isn't it? You have a little boy on one of the tours that dies at a very young age. So it's a sad story.
That's bad.
And they're very funny stories. About a guy that thought that he saw a ghost. When we started at the National Arts Festival in Grahamstown, Makanda. There was a story about Foxy Nerling, who was one of the most loved teachers at the school at St. Andrews. And when he passed on, they named a field after him. And the house prefects used to scare the little boys dressed up in white sheets until one of them was crossing the field at night. And there was this mist, and he saw these two white shapes. So he started running like crazy. It was during the holidays, and he broke the school's strictest rule. And he had a double whiskey at the master's room. It's a very, very well-known story to the local folk. They still laugh about it. And then on the Monday, the local SPCA phoned in to say, we've lost some animals. They escaped through a hole in the fence, except one, a Friesland cow. I wonder if you've seen it at the school. Meanwhile, this particular guy had seen these two white shapes, and it was a Friesland cow because the black parts you don't see, of course, in this. So he actually got a fright from nothing, but he got a taste of his own medicine anyway.
Yeah, well, good.
And then had more medicine, spirits of another sort afterwards.
Definitely. Now, the biggest question of all that I would love to ask you: do Mark Rose-Christie believe in ghosts?
Well, I mean, I was a magician as a kid, so I had an interest in all sorts of things: hypnosis, ghosts, magic, you name it. I've always been a very, I like to invent things. Like my last big illusion show, I invented all the big illusions. So I have some sort of knack for doing that. I don't know why. but I'm thankful for it. And so I like to invent things, imagine things, and also discover and explore things. And I had lived in a house, a smallish house as a kid. And one day my mother got a call from the lady presently occupying the house at that time. And this is about 30 years later, asking if a little girl was ever seen in the house and did she scream. Well, I could see my mother going white on the phone because that's exactly what happened. I had seen this little girl ghost and was screaming. And I myself had a poltergeist incident, although when I was 16, I was going through a brief emotional time, which was soon solved, but nevertheless, my parents had gone out to, in those days, the drive-in with my brother, and I heard this knocking sound, you know. So I was there at home, all stock-a-lean, all alone. Yeah.
Sure.
And I heard this knocking sound, and I eventually worked out where it come from. We had only just moved into the house, and the headboard was fitted to the metal frame, hadn't been bolted in, and it was leaning forward. So I opened up the curtains to close the windows, but the windows were closed. And I thought to myself, well, wind wouldn't make the headboard rock backwards and forwards. It would only push it in one direction.
Yes.
I thought of rats. Well, they wouldn't have the strength to do that. I looked under the bed, and there was a cat on the end of the bed, our black cat. And so I took him, checked the windows and that again, and then I closed my brother's door, and I went into my room, and then this knocking sound carried on, you know, it carried on. And I would go back and put the headboard back up, and eventually it carried on so much that it really started scaring me. So as a 16-year-old, I had my sheets up here and my cat.
Don't feel bad about it. I would have made a duck foot and just run. The first moment I hear the awkward sound, I'm out of there. That's for sure.
Well, when my parents got home that night, I told them about it. And then my mother said, well, that's the domestic lady that worked for us. Often hears furniture being moved around in the lounge. So,
of course,
only years later, when I really got into parapsychology, did I learn that I was creating my own poltergeist there in that instance. And I come to realize that now, of course, you know.
Does it happen very often that one, I mean, I'll take myself as an example. I'm not going to go into details, but I've had an extremely traumatic experience the past year and a half. And do you think something like that might manifest eventually, like creating my own poltergeist or?
Yeah, it absolutely can. And it's no use sending a priest in or a sangoma, because you're not dealing with demonology or witchcraft or any of that sort of stuff. You are dealing with your own emotions, and you need to go to a therapist, you know, and once you've gone to a therapist to work this all out, then the phenomena will stop, you know. There's also a thing called a single apparition. If you've lost somebody dear to you, they will come back, you know, shortly after death to say goodbye to one. So I don't know if that's happened to you at any stage.
No, unfortunately not.
Visited in a dream?
Nothing. That's the weird thing. Nothing's happened. I'm hoping it happens at some point, but it hasn't happened yet.
They usually come back in dreams, and it's all tied in with consciousness at the end of the day. I mean, a lot of people who meditate can actually, you know, sink into the world of full consciousness and see these things. You know, I mean, horses and dogs and cats see these things.
Yes. Animals. Yeah.
I mean, people know they sit in their lounge and they're on their own and they're feeling something's not right. In Afrikaans, there's a lovely word or phrase for that. It's nie reg nie.
Yeah.
And the cat's eyes will get big and it'll look and follow something around the room that you cannot see. Well, it can see the astral body that you're not seeing. You know, I mean, people have experienced these things, you know. Even with crisis ghosts, dead pets that have passed on come back to warn their owners of impending danger. Sometimes that's part of being a crisis ghost, you know.
Yes. That is interesting. Would you just mind mentioning the names again where you guys are doing the tours or the jaunts rather? Sorry.
Yes, we're doing jaunts rather than a bus because of COVID. We are very responsible with that. So everybody uses their own car. It's the same thing. We all go in convoy, not missing anything. We get out at all the major stops. People pack a little picnic basket and they have great fun. And we are running in Johannesburg on the 10th of December as our final tour. And the other final tours operate on the 11th of December. And then Cape Town on the 18th of December. And my hometown, our final tours, because it's my hometown, I'm going to be there all the time. So I'm giving them a double chance, and that's the 17th and the 18th of December.
Awesome. I'll be there. That's one thing I can guarantee you. I will definitely be. So I've got an option.
Nice to have you.
I've got an option of two. Yeah, I mean, you might not even be aware of it. I don't know. But I've been on your tours at least, and I'm saying at least 6 or 7 times. And every single time there's a new story or a different story, or it's not the same thing being repeated year by year by year. That's what I love about it. Every single time there's something new that you learn from it. So
we've had folks that have been on 15 and 16 times, and ones that also try to do it right around the country, try and do all the tours, you know. So so people can come along and book as soon as they can, because I think they're going to be full.
Yeah, that was the next question. How exactly do people get hold of you, or have you got a website booking, or is it on Q Ticket or Compy Ticket?
Sure. It's easy. It's just Mystery Ghost Productions. It used to be called Mystery Ghost Bus of South Africa, but as I say, because of COVID, we're not going to be using the bus for a long, long time. We don't know how long COVID will be.
Topic for a different day.
So Mystery Ghost Productions, in brackets, will say previously known as Mystery Ghost Bus of South Africa. But you just type in Mystery Ghost Productions, it will come up on Facebook, or you put a .co.za behind it, and then, of course, it'll take you to the website. And there's some very good, authentic ghost photos there on that website. We send them over to an expert in America who knows all about pixelization, photoshopping, and all of that. I mean, I'm a photographer myself. I used to also produce with television, so I'm well aware of what one can and cannot do.
Yes.
And so only the most authentic photographs that we've got over the 21 years that we've operated are actually on the website, and people can go and check that out.
That's
brilliant. The magistrate from Paris.
No, that's brilliant, because I actually wanted to ask you, have you got a movie or videos out? And well, there we go. So they can just scroll down to the bottom of our site, and they'll see that there's a video section there, and we're going to be making some more episodes pretty shortly. Brilliant. Now I'll be the first one to check it out, guaranteed. And how can you be certain whether a ghost actually and really exists?
Well, the thing is, as I said in the beginning, you've got to be fairly well trained in these things. And as a scientist, I'm a social scientist, but we apply the same research methodology where you need validity and you also need reliability. And you have to watch out for biases. You have particularly research bias or confirmation bias. I'll give you an example of the latter. That is when you cherry pick. So somebody tells you a story and you cherry pick the information you want and you discard the parts you don't want. Now, that you cannot do. You've got to take the whole package, you see. And you also have to have randomization. You have to have a control group. There's all these sorts of things, and an experiment or a study has to be repeated. I've got a perfect example. I started replay ghosts first when I went on the Kimberley Haunted Walk, then poltergeists. I had a problem dealing with interactive ghosts because I didn't think they could interact as much as one thinks they can. They certainly cannot harm you. There's no documented evidence of a ghost ever harming anybody. And
Very
when
glad.
it says that there, I will agree with Joe Nichols that it's just a lot of bunkum.
I'm very glad to hear that.
So, but also the other thing is where I do disagree with Joe Nichols is that he says that he doesn't believe in various hauntings. But the thing is, when people are having a haunting, if it doesn't happen again, then who do they phone? They don't know who to phone. What, Ghostbusters?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, who do they phone? And will the person arrive there in time to see it? That's the thing. A lot of the cases are deliberate hoaxes, like the Enfield poltergeist, absolute hoax. I mean, there's been many of these. Borley Rectory in England. I mean, Harry Price himself, he could do magic and things like that. So there might be an element of truth to parts of it, but a lot of stuff is manufactured or added on afterwards. Now, in my case, and to answer your question, it was in Durban when we were setting up the Durban tours. I'd asked on Facebook and in the media for stories, and a lady phoned me up and said, there's a gentleman that's dressed in khaki with brown boots, and he's always got this felt hat on. Not always, but most of the time. Yeah. And he smokes a pipe. He's got a pencil moustache. He's black. He's got bluish eyes, and he smokes a pipe, and he sits in such and such a chair. One night I was in my room and I felt my bed go down. Now, when she said I felt my bed go down, then I knew it was not a replay ghost, because a replay ghost can't interact with you. It's just a video, an image, remember? And then she said, she looked out her window because she heard this roar outside. It was a big black car. She didn't know what type of car it was, but it had white on the tires, she said. And he waved, and he was never seen again. So she saw him over a period of 3 months. I then contacted the Mr. Late, L-U-Y-T. I think he's probably still at the Durban Title Deeds office. And if he's listening to this, he will find this fascinating, I'm sure. And I asked him for the previous owners of the house. And it took me quite a while, but when I got to the fourth, I think it was the fourth owner, I had to ask a leading question, and that's something that one doesn't want to do in research, but unfortunately I had to in this case. But all I said was, did a man stay with you that was often dressed in khaki? This is like the thing where people say, why do ghosts wear clothes? Well, clothes also have energy, and that energy can cling to your bodily energy when you pass on. So that's why ghosts could have clothes, or could have something to do with a conscious memory that causes that effect. But we won't go down that path right now. And he said, yes, my uncle stayed with us, and he had shell shock. Today it's called PTSD, or PTSS now. It's now syndrome, not disorder. I see a lot of psychiatry is changing the words to syndromes rather than disorder, and making people think that they too ill, mentally defunct, And I said, well, why did he dress in khaki? He said, well, he was very poor. He had a government grant, and so he would just wear his clothes he had, and often his boots. And I said, and anything else? He said, most of the time he'd wear his felt hat. Well, then my hair started to stand up. This man that I had phoned. And then I said, can you tell me about his features? Well, he had a pencil moustache, and he had steel blue eyes, he said. And I said, where did he sit? Oh, in such a chair in the lounge. And I said, where did he sleep? In such a room, which the lady slept in the same room. And I said, did he drive a car? He said, yes, a big black old Chev, the sort of 1950s, that sort of era around about there, where they had the white rimmed tires, used that word. And, I said, well, okay. Because I asked this lady if she could corroborate her story, because I thought she might be a hoaxer. She never ever contacted me. And if she was a hoaxer, she would have had somebody to corroborate the story. That's what hoaxers have. they have somebody that can back them up. And the fact that she said no made me believe her. And so I said to him, he wasn't that interested either. I said, thank you. And I called him about 2 weeks later. And I said, do you mind if I bring this lady along to your house? He said, sure. I said, do you have any old photos? He said, well, that's actually perfect, because then they can't tell eye color, you see, very easily. Because a light eye can be just a light eye, you know, it's light blue, light green, whatever. And yeah, you have to have some, normally, I mean, you talk about randomization in research methodology, you're talking about a random sample of your demographics, you know, different race groups, different ages, different genders, all of that sort of thing, different cultures, different parts of the world. That's randomization. But yeah, I had to use randomization in another way, because if you have a man in a photograph and he's repeated in the other photographs, even though he's with groups of people, then you were able to see that there is the same man. So I had to be very clever with this and make sure there were photographs with other men that that were the same. So it wasn't just him in all the photographs. You know, he was out of some, and there were other men who were in the same photographs and so forth. So there was no way she could then isolate just him if she didn't know what he looked like. So the photographs were spread onto a table in the dining room, and we left. I stood behind her, in fact. She had her back to me. I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything. Just like the telephone conversation I had with both of them, I just listened to them. Yeah. There was no confirmation bias. I just listened to exactly their story, wrote it down word for word. There were no non-verbal cues or non-verbal behavior to influence them. There were no leading questions. There was no research bias. All this had been eliminated. And he went out of the dining room, closed the door, and after a while, she'd said, "Okay, he can come back in." He came back in. I walked forward. She'd separated the photos she wanted, and she said, "That's him there, 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 and there."
Wow!
And she was absolutely spot on. That's another thing I wanted to just say. I was saying, I mean, that is a wow, isn't it? I mean, that is when I really knew that this is not a hoax. I could also tell by their verbal and non-verbal behavior they'd never spoken or met before. And there's no way she could have been influenced anyway, because he was outside, I was behind her. But I was saying about duplicating an experiment. Well, there were a number of duplications here. Number one, I get her story duplicated by what he tells me about his uncle, duplicated by another experiment, which is the photographs. So now you've got 3 points of reference, to verify this. And that is when I started to believe in interactive ghosts. And so there's many different types of ghosts. I won't tell you about all of them at this point in time, but there are many different types, and that is one of them. An interesting one is one called a doppelganger. And that is somebody says, "I saw you today at the supermarket at 3 o'clock," and you say, "Well, that's impossible, because at 3 o'clock today I was having my appendix out." And I was under anesthetic, so you were in an altered state, So what happens is that your astral body does travel, and it went off to the supermarket, and your friend did see your astral body, and it looks like your normal body. And so what people will usually say in that instance is, "Oh, well, if it wasn't you, it must have been your double." So hence the word doppelganger, meaning in the German, in German, it means a double walker. So that's what's called a living ghost. I know that sounds very funny, very odd. But, the same thing happens when people go overseas. They walk around a street corner and they say, "Oh, I've been here before." They call it déjà vu, just because they're in a relaxed state, in a euphoric state, an altered state, and the astral body goes around the corner a split second before the physical body can catch up, And so you see the scene twice, and you think you've seen it before. Meanwhile, it's this deja vu phenomenon.
Phew. That is beyond interesting, and hopefully I'll be sleeping tonight. That's for sure. All right, sir. Thank you so much for your time, and a real honor to have you on at last. And hopefully we can do it in the not so distant future again. And,
yeah, I'm wanting to retire, so I don't know for how long the tours will run. So any tour could be the last one.
Okay. So
Port Elizabeth, at the moment, I'm running my final 2, so we won't be having any more Port Elizabeth. And I think Cape Town will be the final one this year. And then I might go on with Johannesburg, Parys, and Cullinan next year. I don't know. I'll just see how it plays out. I've been doing this for 21 years. I now need to also relax, otherwise I'll become a ghost.
Yeah, definitely a replay ghost after doing it for 20 odd years. So
yes, that's very good.
Yeah. No, okay, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And honestly, you pretty much covered everything I thought I could ask you. So thank you so much.
I think you've asked some very, very good questions, quite frankly.
Oh, thank you. Okay, go well. And I will be checking out with without my ghost. You said 17, 18 December.
Yes, that will be for Port Elizabeth. Yes.
Perfect. I'll say. No, we'll
all our dates are on the website anyway.
So in short, if people would like to go onto one of these ghost jaunts, now is probably the best time, because you never know where
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would say go now, because I don't know when I'm going to stop. But certainly Port Elizabeth is the last 2, and Cape Town, I think, is going to be the last one. And then I might do some more next year. I'll see how it goes. But that's just my thinking at the moment.
Okay. So all Port Elizabethians or Tabegaians, I'm not sure what you call the new name in plural, but come on, guys.
And the Cape Townians, that's an easier one.
Yeah. Oh, you're going to finish the Cape Town one as well?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think so.
Yeah, they've got a lot of money. Cape Townians can definitely, they've got no excuse. They can, it's scratch in their pocket. That's just small change for them. So no doubt about it.
Our tours are quite inexpensive, so
very,
I don't think anyone will have a problem anyway.
Very much so. I will fully agree with you there. It's actually a joke compared to how other places rob you, basically. So yeah, they won't get it.
I do it more for the fun and educational value.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. It's not a rip-off, and it's an awesome experience. And yeah, how long does it take? It takes about what, 3-4 hours roughly?
About 4 hours. 4. Yeah, sometimes a little over. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's a good time, honestly. Very good time.
Well, festive season, so
yeah.
The ghost of Christmas, you think of those sort of stories, Charles Dickens and all of that. So yeah, it's the right time of year. In fact, ghost stories were often told over Christmas time, during Victorian times, believe it or not.
And so we learn and just keep on learning. But yeah. All right, Mr. Christie, thank you so much for your time. And I'll see you soon in Port Elizabeth. And I'll have my, what do you call it? My little basket ready to go and join the convoy for sure.
Lovely.
I'm looking very much forward to that.
And to you and all the viewers and listeners out there, may the good spirits be with you this season, and let's hope COVID leaves us as soon as it came.
Yeah.
And let us celebrate and enjoy.
Definitely. Thank you so much, man. We'll definitely be in contact again, hopefully soon.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.